Hello everyone, my name is Andrew Posert, and today I will be delving deeper into Chapter 12 of Honest Work, a business ethics reader entitled Working with Mother Nature. I will be discussing complicated ethical dilemmas, such as when a little extra money is needed to do the right thing, and when an economical mindset is all that really matters. For most of this video, I'll consider the topics at hand with the mindset of a consumer, rather than as a politician or as a businessman, but it's still important to consider all possible outlooks and opinions. First off, I would like to clarify something that many people often struggle to remember. This is the fact that no matter what issue is being considered, there is no such thing as environmental law. There are only laws and policies that pertain to the environment. Cases such as oil spills, contamination, and other man-made disasters routinely arise that to many might seem like a far more concerning issue. However, there is no special standard for these issues simply because the environment is at stake. Just like in the courtroom, the same goes for businesses. Businesses do not have any additional obligation to protect the environment above what is required by the law. This isn't to say that all businesses operate solely based on economic motives, but quite often that is the case. Based on this, it's fair to raise the argument that since large companies contribute so heavily and control so much money and influence, that they should bear a larger load of the cleanup as well. And in many cases this is true. Simply by setting a minimum, companies have a baseline to follow. Additionally, this doesn't rule out any bonus charity or altruistic deeds that they choose to perform on their own. Throughout this video, the biggest dispute we will try and get to the bottom of is who is to blame for all this pollution and man-made disasters that we face today. In a world with ever-increasing concerns, there is always someone else to point the finger at. And while it's easy to vote for a bill increasing public transportation and reduce the waste close to home, it's just as easy to drive your SUV to the ballot office and never think about such a bill again. When the topic of environmental progress is discussed, hypocrisy weaves in and out of every argument. According to Milton Friedman, the consumers are ultimately responsible for all outputs of production. When they complain about the smoke billowing out of the towers of the electrical plant, they are the ones who turn on the light switch, which contributes to the very same smog. According to Friedman, the market is in their hands. And if they choose to purchase goods cost-effectively rather than with environmental integrity, it's their choice. Thus, they have added to the pollution. Lastly, whether you are either a producer or a consumer, it's important to remember that pollution recognizes no national boundaries. The effect on the quality of our air, water, soil, and all other natural resources affects every one of us. In the global economy that we live in today, goods come together from all across the globe. Focusing in on an industry notorious for pollution that is now making gigantic strides towards improvement, we look at the automobile industry. American citizens spent almost $800 billion on imported cars in 2017, and 41% of which were hybrid or electric cars. While that's great news overall, that's a massive amount of waste left behind in the countries of assembly and production, regardless of the advancements of these vehicles. Before my partner Matt takes over to discuss some of the producer aspects of these issues, I would like to briefly point out why so many of them are so difficult to solve. That is because so much of what we do today has become a trade-off. When one industry improves, another must suffer. When policies tighten, businesses look elsewhere. When U.S. companies must comply with new, more rigid standards, some may move to alternatives abroad, many of which enforce policies nowhere near the regulations that they had at home. This can create exponentially disastrous results for their new environment, which lacks the capability or capital to combat such issues. This creates the opposite effect of the new standard's goals, and the company may have had the capability to comply with only minor difficulty at home from the start. When acting ethically, it's important to keep factors for all parties and members in mind, and remember, there is usually a long distance between the ends and the means.
Hello everyone, my name is Matt Sanders, and just like Andrew mentioned earlier, I'll be discussing the ethics of working with the environment from the company's perspective. First, we need to establish that a business has no greater obligation to protect the environment than any other citizen. Although some business decisions have harmed the environment, these decisions have violated no environmental moral obligation. Businesses do, however, have an obligation to obey the law, avoid negligent behavior, to tell the truth, and to avoid intervention in the political process for the purpose of defeating and weakening environmental regulations. Business takes their cues from the market. They follow consumer preferences and try to put forth a quality product that can compete in the market. Many companies have the ability to create products that are much safer to the consumer and less harmful to the environment than are currently available to the market, such as automobiles. But the cost to the company, and consequently to the consumers, is far beyond the consumer's willingness to pay. So, a trade-off needs to be made, which the market decides via the consumer. This does not mean that businesses do not care about the environment, but it is not entirely their responsibility to do anything about it. Surprisingly, the public has quite a high tolerance for environmental damage. For example, Procter & Gamble offered Downy fabric softener in a concentrated form that requires less packaging than ready-to-use products. However, the concentrate version is less convenient because it has to be mixed with water, and as a result, sales have been poor. Based on this example, if consumers are not willing to pay more for higher quality products or added environmental protection and conservation, then this must be a case of market failure. In which case, it is not the responsibility of businesses to fix, but rather, it is the government's task to adjust consumer preferences with an appropriate market value. Critics of business say that businesses have a special obligation to protect the environment and to solve any crisis. Since they have more knowledge, power, and wealth, they should have a greater role in discovering solutions. If businesses are consuming a disproportionate amount of the available resources, then they should have an increased presence in combating these issues. More than ever before, companies are focusing on the environmental aspects of their actions. While the overall thought process is to minimize costs and maximize profit and brand management, companies are utilizing environmental causes as a marketing tool to connect with their customers. They do this to give the customer an additional sense of satisfaction or accomplishment. And often, these philanthropic and service-oriented themes represent the company at its core and are the main driver for success, not necessarily profit. A considerable number of modern businesses devote sections of their mission statements to various environmental causes. To understand the perspective of the local community, we asked some University of Redlands students to weigh in on the challenges that face consumers and producers daily.
Yeah, I would definitely pay extra for meat products and hamburgers and whatnot if I were ensured that the living conditions of animals were better prepped for them and were kept sanitary and whatnot.
Yes, I would, because I feel like if it's more sanitary and safe and the cows are comfortable, then the food would taste better and I would feel better about eating it.
I'd be willing to pay a little bit extra for every cheeseburger to ensure that it was sanitary and safe and produced ethically, because even though it's a little extra out of my pocket, I want to support organizations that do the right thing.
I have conflicting opinions because I appreciate animals and I want them to have the best lives, but I also realize that meat is a huge part of our culture and everyone eats meat, and if meat were to be more expensive, then people wouldn't eat.
I think from the business perspective, I would definitely pay a little bit extra for the cost of my ingredients to ensure that it was ethical and safe, because one, that's the right thing to do, and if you do it, it's going to encourage other businesses in your industry to do that, but also consumers look at practices from a business perspective and they will appreciate and acknowledge that by buying your products if you are socially responsible.
Yeah, I would accept decreased profits because I believe animals should live their best life, and I believe they have a place on this planet.
I would have the United States laws as a base for the laws, and then if I were to go to a foreign country and they were not as good, say, I would still abide by those United States laws.
If I was operating in a foreign business and their environmental laws were a lot lower than my home country, I would still abide by my home country laws because it's the right thing to do. I wouldn't want to exploit a foreign country.
I think I would decide what is best for my company and what is best for the current environment, and try to make a compromise between the both for the best.
Go.
I think that both parties are responsible, the consumer and the company, when it comes to electricity usage or pollution, because if it's a basic necessity that everyone needs, like electricity, then it's not a company's fault for filling that demand. But as consumers, if we overuse it, then that extra falls on us.
The consumers are the end product, so I believe that they are the true, producers of pollution.
Now we will have a chance to see what some of the decision makers that affect all of us feel about some of the problems at hand.
Hello, average consumer.
Hello, average producer. Let's get down to business.
Let's. First, I'd like to start by saying businesses do not have any special obligation to protect the environment because we listen and respond to your preferences.
What do you mean you respond to my preferences? How can you when you have to consider the whole market and consider what's best for public good? It's impossible for me to express my opinions.
Well, that's why you have the ability to express your views through your local congressman.
But I can't. Businesses keep lobbying the politicians against stricter environmental regulations, so either way, my preferences are never heard. Just because they have more money doesn't mean they care any more than I do.
But if we are not permitted a role in the political process, then our interests will never be heard, and Congress and state legislators could potentially make decisions that will put businesses at a severe competitive disadvantage to foreign imports.
But businesses claim not to interfere with the political process, to allow people like me to share our preferences regarding environmental protection and conservation. Then, you flip your stance and attempt to weaken environmental regulations as soon as businesses move on. So which one is it?
We're in quite a bind as well. A consumer may vote in a politician that supports stricter environmental standards, but then the consumer's personal spending habits will align more closely with the opposite side of the spectrum. How does a business balance both?
I do my best to purchase goods from a company that I can get behind, but my budget can only stretch so far. I don't like how I'm being forced to choose between saving my wallet and saving the environment. You can't put a price tag on something that will benefit or hurt all of us.
But how is a business supposed to know what clean air or clean water is? We need some direction.
Then maybe we can work together. Maybe even with our government. We need clear standards and acceptable practices that everyone can understand.
That's a great place to start. When everyone does their part, it can go a long way.
And as long as we stand our ground, we are the ones who control the market.
Exactly. As consumers, you have the say of what gets produced. If everyone buys environmentally friendly products, then that's what businesses will make.
You have a deal, as long as I get to keep my Hummer.
Ha ha ha. Thank you everyone for watching. We hope you gained some valuable insight, and we look forward to discussing this further with you on Wednesday.